going on, OTF fam? Hope everybody's doing great on this Wednesday night. This is the Wednesday night live stream here on Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by lifetime Longhorn Marcus Mars. Marcus, this is the first time we're doing the Wednesday live stream. You and I have done live streams together, but this will be our normal, regular Wednesday lineup, barring any unforeseen changes. It'll be Marcus and I taking you through the off season. Got a lot to talk about real quick. Want to thank our lead sponsor for the Wednesday night live stream. That's Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. Tell you more about Andy Ludicky and some of our other sponsors here on Texas Football throughout the night. Thank you, Cisco. Good evening to you too. Questions, comments in the chat, always welcome. Super chats, as always, jump to the front of the line. Marcus, we've seen better halves of basketball than the one Texas just finished in Fayetteville. I knew this was going to be a tall order because you got an Arkansas team that's pretty desperate after getting their clock cleaned by Florida over the weekend. Maybe Texas a little fat and happy after going on the road to College Station and getting a win over Texas A&M, getting ready to play Oklahoma at home on Saturday. I'm not saying that Texas just kind of, packed it in, but I think this is a tale of two different teams right now, Marcus. One that I think probably feels pretty good about where they are for March, and the other one that really needs to get back on track, and that's Arkansas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, for as much as, Dalen Swain has ascended this year and really impressed, Arkansas has a lineup full of guys that are going to be pros. I mean, Acuff might be a top 5 pick, right? So, I mean, it's one of those deals where, I've gotten to a place with Texas basketball, especially this season, where they don't get my blood pressure up. And I think it's when, again, it goes back to what expectations did you set, for the season? And, I wanted to give Sean Miller an opportunity to kind of show, improve a bit, with some proof of concept, but I didn't have any, sights on this being, the year, if you will, in his very first season out. So you would love the score to look different, but I don't feel one way or the other about it. They still have an opportunity to close the season well and get in the tournament. And, at that point you see what happens, but I'm really, kind of judging him by next year and beyond, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Still got a chance to get the 10 SEC wins if you beat Oklahoma on Saturday. If I'm disappointed in anything, Marcus, in the first half, look, I know they're bad on defense, but Arkansas, as good as they are, you just give them way too many open shots. And 8 for 14 at the foul line, that's not – this team's much better. This is one of the best free throw shooting teams in the country. They're way better than 57% from the foul line.
Yeah, absolutely. It may just be one of those deals, man, where they just kind of walked into a bit of a buzzsaw. To your point, Jeff, Arkansas was kind of licking their wounds. And, even against – I think I heard Jerry talking about, that Arkansas had been giving up a lot of points. I want to say it was averaging 94 points or something they were giving up over the last several games. Granted, playing some really good competition, but, one of those deals where you knew they were going to be challenged and challenged to, respond well. It does suck, that there's some things that are in their control that they could certainly take care of. But again, I'm not going to, put an indictment out on them or be calling for Sean Miller's head or anything like that. I think we're a ways away from that.
Yeah, absolutely not. None of that here. It's been a good first year. We'll see how it ends for Texas. But, hey, if you don't want to watch second half of the basketball game, we're talking Texas football here on the On Texas Football Wednesday night live stream. Got a lot to get to. Marcus, it's interesting that Texas is playing Arkansas in basketball tonight because we've got kind of a melancholy start to the show a little bit. Lou Holtz, legendary college coach at Notre Dame, Minnesota, NC State, and Arkansas, passed away today. Me growing up as a kid in the early 90s, we're the same age, Marcus, growing up in the early 90s when I started watching college football. Not that Notre Dame hasn't ever not been a big deal, but Lou Holtz and Notre Dame was a massive deal in the early 90s. So I got to know that program and know Lou Holtz pretty quick as I started watching college football. It's a sad day because this is one of the the legendary figures in college football coaching that's no longer with us.
Yeah, and certainly, sending our thoughts and prayers to his family and lived a good life. I think he was 89? Am I right on that, Jeff?
So, yes.
I think he was 89. So life, well lived. And, you kind of just get to one of those points, the older you get, kind of like you said, Jeff, you start seeing the people that you looked up to, reaching the end of their time with us. But, it was certainly great for the game. And, Was always one that, had a lot of little quips that, he could, kind of file away and, to a large degree live by even beyond football. So certainly rest in peace to Lou Holtz.
I always enjoyed a Lou Holtz press conference, even going back and reading some of it because some of the folks over on the message board at ontexasfootball.com posted some of the press conferences. Man, and his Notre Dame teams were really talented. Jerome Bettis, Bryant Young. I mean, he coached Hall of Famers at Notre Dame. Ricky Waters are just some great players. And I read his press conference transcript the week they played Texas. They're getting ready to come to Austin in '96. You would have thought, Marcus, they were getting ready to play your 05 Texas team, and that was like the worst Notre Dame team in the history of man that Lou Holtz was bringing down here. Just I love the self-deprecating humor that Lou Holtz brought to the table. Yeah. And you know what? Had some legendary battles when he was a head coach at Arkansas against Texas, and then really kind of the only other time he coached against Texas after that was the 2 times at Notre Dame, that home and home in '95, the game in South Bend, and then the game in '96 where Bryant Westbrook putting the hurt on Randy Kinder. Still one of the, I don't know, top 3, top 5 most vicious in-game hits I've ever seen in my life, what Bryant Westbrook did to Randy Kinder that day. And the tie the Lou Holtz has to Texas, other than that, his grandson, Trey was Trey played for Charlie Strong. And, Coach Holtz came and talked to the team a few times during Charlie Strong's tenure because they were very close. Charlie worked for Lou Holtz at South Carolina. So there's a way to tie this into Texas, Marcus.
Always, man. And yeah, like you said, I mean, there's so many memories throughout the years, and you have just these different figures that, I can't remember where I first heard it, but it's like, can you tell the story of college football, without certain people? And I think Lou Holtz is one of those figures that it would be pretty tough, for me to be able to try to kind of lay out the story of college football and completely leave him out of it. So.
I love the way you said that, Marcus, because I always say, like, anytime the Hall of Fame discussion comes up, and it's a lot of it because the basketball Hall of Fame is its own different deal. Really, with football and baseball, it's like, hey, if you're debating whether this guy's a Hall of Famer, can you tell the story of his sport in the era he played without him? And if you can't, then to me, he's a Hall of Fame. So I always said, like, I don't know why it took Drew Pearson so long to get into the Hall of Fame. You can't talk about the NFL while Drew Pearson was a part of the Cowboys without him being a really big part of that story. So, yeah, I'm with you right there on Lou Holtz. So, again, thoughts and prayers with the Holtz family. Lou Holtz, dead at the age of 89, losing a college football legend today. Marcus, we were texting earlier today, and I haven't had any thoughts on this, at least on the channel yet. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about it. The news that surfaced a few days ago, Mark Stoops, the now former Kentucky head coach, by the way, the winningest head coach in Kentucky history, past Bear Bryant. I think he's 22 games ahead of Bear Bryant on Kentucky's all-time wins list. Gonna be taking the title of special assistant to the head coach for Steve Sarkisian at Texas. So he's gonna be basically what Paul Christ and Gary Patterson and Neil Brown. That's what that role is for, Marcus. As I've always said, it's a head coach that you don't really know what's next. You want to stay close to the game, but you don't want to get right back in and take another job. Hey, just take a year, come down to Austin, hang out with Sark, talk ball, kind of get back to your roots. But I want to get you can go wherever you want with it, Marcus, but I thought of this after we were texting today. I was like, if you look at Mark Stoops' background, there's a couple things. First off, he had a really good, I think, won 5 of his last 8 against Florida, which the more I think about it, Sark must really, really want that game back that they lost in games. Mark Stoops' teams were known, even though the talent disadvantage was the size of the Grand Canyon, were always known for playing Georgia really tough, playing Georgia really physical. And so I looked at those 2 things. But the other thing I thought, Marcus, if you look at Mark Stoops' background, he's a defensive backs coach by trade. And in Sark's quest to really tie the back end with the front end defensively, bringing back Will Muschamp's a big part of that, fixing the secondary. I don't know if people remember because it was so long ago. Mark Stoops, his first big break as a coach came when he was the secondary coach at Miami back in the early 2000s. So Ed Reed, Sean Taylor, Mike Rump, Philip Buchanan, all the great defensive backs that came through Miami from 01 to 03, all those guys were coached by Mark Stoops. So I got to think, Marcus, that's probably all of it, but I'm not losing sight of the fact that, hey, his specialty is in the secondary. And I think this is another piece that it doesn't hurt to have that kind of brain power in the room when you're trying to figure out how to get your pass defense back on track.
Absolutely. And I think, when I first heard about it, I was really happy with the hire, right? Like I know there's some folks that are like it's a Stoops, or I don't trust him. Is he a mole? Like all these things. Look, I understand if people want to kind of take that angle to it, so be it. That's not necessarily where I fall on it. I think it shows a further penchant of Sark to try and find guys that are deeply rooted and steeped in the SEC. To your point, another person that can be an opportunity for Sark to be able to pick his brain on just bigger picture items, but then also, when they get into, certain game plan weeks, look, man, like how did you give us fits in this way? A lot of the self-scouting stuff. Now you have another head coach on the roster that has an opportunity to, kind of do some jousting with Will Muschamp, right? And then Rod and I talked about this a bit last week, but even in bring in Billy Gonzalez. So now that's unless I'm missing somebody, that's three guys that have had some form of head coaching responsibilities. Billy Gonzalez coming over from Florida. To your point, again, Sark, just doing things that says, hey, there's some areas we really got to shore up. And, again, I've said this multiple times too, Jeff, but it's you're going to a 9-game SEC season, and I probably won't go an episode that I'm on anything without saying it, because that's different than 8. I know it's only one game, but it is significantly different. And especially this season, when you think about this mantra of really pushing all your chips in and doing everything you can to make sure that you maximize Arch for some of the road games that, you're going to face with trips to, Tennessee, trip to LSU, trip to Missouri, and then, those Aggies, they're what they are. But I think you want to make sure that you have a staff that is very well prepared for those environments to help prepare your team for those environments. So I personally love the hire. And to your point, it's probably, part of the car wash where he's here for a year and then maybe he goes, off into the next job of his choice. But I like it. And I think it's a further testament to Sark, trying to leave no stone unturned and take a look at, his roster construction and what then can he do from a coaching perspective to help those guys be their best.
You talk about the road trips, Marcus. I keep going back, and I want to thank Sark and that team last year for not making me look really bad by saying this, but I really believe it. I think especially going to a 9-game schedule, you can't expect anybody to go through an SEC schedule undefeated. Like especially as much as the talent spread out now, like there's not just one just dominant team over the league. Even Georgia, like we've seen Georgia the last couple of years slip up. A&M almost did it last year until Texas. I think South Carolina exposed some things, and then Texas really did, and then we kind of saw where A&M was in the playoff. But, man, I just think the SEC is too good. And, again, just having somebody with you that knows how to manage the ebbs and flows of this league, man, it's not a bad thing. And, again, like what you said, like yeah, he's Bob Stoops' brother and Mike Stoops' brother. That's not going to sit well with a lot of people. But at the end of the day, I would like to think, Marcus, that Mark Stoops is at the point in his career where it's not about any of that. It's about, hey, I want to stay close to the game, but I need a little bit of a reset before I really figure out what's next. After basically you were the head coach at Kentucky for pretty much a generation of Kentucky football fans. Like that's a lot of them. That's all they know is Mark Stoops being the head coach there. So not a bad deal. Like I said, Neil Brown's done it. Paul Christ has done it. A lot of guys have done it. Just come hang out with Sark. And I think you mentioned Billy Gonzalez, Steve Kasula from Michigan, who was there. He's been an assistant coach there. He's been an analyst, several different roles at Michigan. He's coming in as an analyst. He was their play caller for the bowl game. And then, you look at some of the young up and coming assistants that have gotten promoted. When you have the conditions now where you can have unlimited coaches, there's not a cap on on-field coaches.
Right.
I really dig the way Sark does it, Marcus, because you've got a nice mix of veteran coaches that might be trying to figure out what's next and you're making a pit stop here, or young coaches that, man, if you're a young quarterbacks coach like Mike Bamonte and you're in the room with Sark and AJ Milwee, that's a hell of an apprenticeship where you're getting on the job training. So I like the mix that he's got with the coaching staff.
Yeah. I think it's a perfect mixture, and I think there's a lot of different, angles you can take on how you go about building a team. Right. And I think when you're trying to figure out how you get over the hump, right, you had 2 years of back-to-back semifinal appearances. Things didn't go your way last year, and the things that were within your control, you didn't fully control. So now you're trying to find, any edge that you can. And so these type of moves, I think, are perfect for that. I saw we had a super chat that kind of is related to the same thing. So I don't know if we get a chance to hit that.
We'll get to it right now. All right, Cube, thank you for the super chat. What does Stoops, quote unquote, knowing the SEC mean exactly? You've got a great feel for personnel, for coaches. And I think, Rod and I talked about this on Football Theory. Sometimes in football, when Sark, from a play calling standpoint, you got to play the man, not the hand. The situation may tell you, okay, I need to do this, but based on that coach's tendencies, you may need to go a different direction with your play calling or how you're managing the game. Mark Stoops can help you with that. And then it's also stuff, Mark, is like, look, Sark is a head coach. I think he went to Baton Rouge with UW back in 2011, maybe. So it's been a long time. It could be like, hey, when you go to Baton Rouge, stay at this hotel, stay in this part of town, stay this distance from the stadium. Don't stay here. Or, hey, when you go to Knoxville, make sure you take, have the police escorts have you take this path to the stadium because you won't get stuck in any traffic or have to deal with anything. Like, it can be just minute details like that really, quite frankly, the head coach doesn't have time to think about, that Mark Stoops can pass along. So it's just when you've been in the league and know these coaches as well and as long as Mark Stoops has, it's invaluable information that you can pass on.
Yeah, and to your point, right? Let's put a number to it. If I'm not mistaken, he's been coaching Kentucky for 13 years. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Or in the SEC for 13 years, maybe the same. That's a lot of time to see a lot of different places, pick up on some different nuances, and to what you hit on earlier. Like if the ultimate goal is to be SEC champion, get into the playoffs, and win it all. Rod's been saying this a lot lately, just the way the football gods work out, you're probably going to have to see Kirby at some point again, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a guy that has, regardless of the talent disparity, found ways to really frustrate and quite often take some Georgia squads that are, supremely talented beyond what he had to the brink. And so, you need to find every particular angle. So when we talk about knowing the SEC, it's just all the things that Jeff mentioned, and then even to add to that, like there's even little, nuances about stadiums, right? Like to your point, I don't know the last time that Sark has made trips to some of these places, but, Stoops would have been there much more recent. I can tell you when we went to Tech, it was one of those deals where your locker room is underneath the stands. So, like you can literally see feet, kind of walking by through one of the crevices. When we went to Kansas one year, all the doors were taken off of the stalls, right? So if you need to go and do something that was going to take you a little more time, you were out in the open. Like, and it sounds silly, right? But to your point, like these are maybe some things that you don't know if you haven't been there. And so instead of having to necessarily call somebody up, again, I have two guys that have full-time head coaching experience on the staff in the SEC. In Muschamp and in Mark Stoops, and then a third that was the interim head coach for Florida for 5 games after Billy Napier was fired. So I think that's what we talk about when you look at how he's molded this staff, and then you add in the addition of Jabbar Jalouk. So you're up to like 4 or 5 of your coaches that have had some experience in the SEC. And, for anywhere that you felt or a fan has felt that we were out physicaled or we didn't show up to play, I think some of these little chess moves can sometimes make all the difference.
It's the same reason, part of the same reason Sark brought in Gary Patterson. Now, a lot of that was to help PK figure out, the defense and coverages because they wanted to run a lot more quarters coverage, and that's kind of Gary Patterson's specialty. But a lot of it was, hey, here's what you need to know when you coach against a Mike Gundy, or here's what you need to know when you coach against a Matt Campbell, fill in the blank, Big 12 head coach, because Gary Patterson had been in the league so long. So it's a lot of those same things that might not be the primary reason why you hire him, but it dang sure doesn't hurt that's why you hired him. So exactly. We can keep talking about that if everybody wants to. As always, we'll kind of let the chat direct us on in terms of where we go. All right, Cube, again, thank you for the super chat. Got a game I want to play with Marcus too here in a little bit. We're gonna play a little keep or cut for, just like we did with Rod last week. Marcus gets his turn this week, and this is something we'll do throughout the on these weeknight live streams. But at any rate, let's go ahead and thank our lead sponsor for the Wednesday night live stream. That's Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. Are you stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks PTO and you have no control over the money you can make or your schedule in general? That's you. Call Andy. He's going to take you through a process to help you find a business that's going to fit your skill set and your financial goals. Franchise ownership isn't for everybody, but if you have a desire to take control of your own destiny, just give Andy a call or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Again, that's andy@myperfectfranchise.net. And we want to thank Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise for sponsoring the Wednesday night live stream here at On Texas Football. All right, Marcus, you ready for a little keep for, cut for? Let's go ahead and do this because I think everybody's fired up about it. They're ready for it to happen. So with Rod, we did this with defensive backs. Obviously, Rod, a member of DBU. Marcus, we're going to do this with the position you played at Texas. We're going to do this with Texas linebackers. Now, I tried not to go too far into the Wayback Machine.
Okay.
I tried to cover as many eras of Texas football as I could. So, Marcus, just in case you don't know or need a refresher, or anybody out there wonders how I get this, I've got 8 names. I'm just going to rattle off. Marcus is going to give me a keep or cut. Whenever he gets to 4 cuts, he keeps whoever's left, or he gets to 3 keeps or 4 keeps, we've got to cut whoever's left. Okay. So, Marcus, are you ready?
Do I get to ask any qualifying questions first?
Well, yeah, you can ask whatever you want, but at the end of the day, this is your list. You can do it however you want. It could just be, hey, I'm looking for the 4 that would be on my Texas linebacker Mount Rushmore, or just it could be 4 guys that you've seen or whatever. However you want to qualify, Marcus.
Did you give me all linebackers, or are there any? Is there a sprinkling of like a linebacker edge situation?
I tried to avoid those.
Okay. All right.
Try to avoid those.
I think I can do this.
Okay.
I think I can do this. I'm ready.
Okay. The only time I didn't do that was with the first name, because he was a finalist for the Butkus Award in 2009. Marcus, Sergio Kindle, keep or cut?
Serge is my dog too. And I get 4.
You're 4 keeps, yes.
That is tough. I think I'm going to have to cut Serge. And I hate it out the gate, but I get the sense that maybe I have another 4 in there that will make me right. I love him, and hopefully he's not watching this and doesn't hate me for it.
Here, if you want an out on cutting Sergio Kindle, your out is, can you really call him a linebacker since he did play so much on the edge? That
was why I qualified it. So I at least appreciate you starting there, because I feel like there will be 4 linebackers that were deployed solely at linebacker. So we'll see. But I think I'm okay.
I can tell you this: no more hybrid edge defenders, because there was a couple I thought, hey, did we put them on here? No, let's just do linebackers other than Sergio. So everybody else, Marcus, is going to be strictly linebacker. Name number 2 for keeper cut. It's the guy that people, myself included, probably thought should have played more on the edge. We're going new school. Anthony Hill, keep or cut?
Okay. Anthony Hill. See, I feel like I'm going to be too biased to the older guys here. Did Ant get a second team All-American?
Yes, he did. 2 years in a row, actually. So he's a 2-time second team All-American.
2-time second team All-American. I'm going to cut Ant too. Okay. I'm rolling some dice here, but I'm cutting him.
Is it just you don't want to sound too biased you don't want the recency bias?
I don't want the recency bias, and the 4 names that I have in mind that I'm hoping are on this list, I think are validly ahead of him. So,
and for the record, so everybody knows, I'm not saying these are the 8 best linebackers in school history. These are just 8 names
I got you.
I picked out, tried to cover as much ground throughout the history of the program as I could. I think Marcus, producer Matt, is going to love the next name on the list, keeper cut. Yes, Matthew, Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl champion, Jordan Hicks.
Okay,
Keeper
Jordan
cut.
Hicks. All right. On this one, I'm keeping Jordan, and
Okay.
I know that may seem a little different in that I cut Ant Hill, but I think he came at a time where he really was able to like fully anchor some solid Texas defenses, and was kind of I think a shift a bit in the style of linebacker that we started recruiting. So
Yep.
I'm gonna keep Jordan
From Ohio, a Will Muschamp recruit. Muschamp recruited him. Cut his teeth playing in that linebacker room with Manny Acho and Keenan Robinson. So he had two pros he was learning from. Fought through a ton of injuries in his career.
That's the other thing, the injuries.
And, shouldn't have played football, Marcus, as long as he did, given and we're talking like torn, was a groin or adductor. I forget what the lower body muscle tear was. Achilles injury. They get a pec injury in the NFL at one point, but played for a really long time, really productive guy in the pros. And that 2014 defense he was a part of, it's lost to history because the offense was just so bad. But that 2014 defense was salty. And you go back and look at that defense, Marcus. Malcolm Brown, first-round pick, played in the multiple times Super Bowl champion. Quandre Diggs, Super Bowl champion, Pro Bowler. Jordan Hicks, Super Bowl champion, played double-digit years in the NFL. Like, you had a lot of guys. Even you want to go deeper, like Mikael Thompson was a draft pick. Duke Thomas played in the league. Cedric Reed had a cup of coffee in the league. That 14 defense was nasty. It's just that was a 6 and 17 because the offense was brutal in 2014.
Yeah, they were tough.
Thank you very much, Sean Watson, for that. Name number 4 on keeper cut. If Sean Watson ever sees me in the street, he will probably punch me in the face, and that's okay. I deserve it. I'm fine with that. Name number 4, Marcus, keeper cut, Texas linebacker edition. Britt Hager, keep or cut? Another member of Matthew's loved, and in my case, hated the Philadelphia Eagles.
So I want to, off the cuff, I want to say keep. Before I give you a final, though, let's see. So I'm at 3 people so far that we've gone through. I've kept 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I gotta keep Britt Hager.
You're gonna keep Britt Hager. Okay. Highly productive. You look at some of Britt Hager's tackle numbers, just in terms.
Yeah, is he still the all-time leader, or was he at one point?
Yeah, he's. Those tackle numbers, like you were talking about, seasons where he's upwards of like 150 plus tackles in a season. He's got tackle numbers that, especially now, Marcus, now that it's more space and pace football and it's more kind of platooning. I don't think some of his tackle numbers are ever going to be touched. One of the last Texas linebackers to wear number 60 for a full season. I think Brian Jones was the last, and then some guys have worn it there on special occasions. That's why I didn't have a problem at all with Brecken wearing it as many times. He wore it a couple times because your dad wore it. Like, it's the legacy. It's great. I didn't have a problem with that at all. Britt Hager, insanely productive. All right, Marcus. So far, we're cutting Sergio Kendall and Anthony Hill. We're keeping Jordan Hicks and Britt Hager. Keeper cut. Tommy Novus.
Yeah, you got to keep Tommy.
Yeah,
but see now, this is tough. Okay, I might have to. All right, yeah, I think that's kind of hands down. You got to keep Tommy.
Yeah.
Who I'm hoping I get to keep as my 4th here. I think he's the guy that kind of set the bar for the linebacker position at Texas.
Without question, should have already been in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Why he's not in there? I know he played for the Falcons, were a garbage franchise when he was there. It's not his fault. One of the few members of the NFL 1960s All Decades team that's not in the Hall of Fame. So he's in the College Football Hall of Fame. One of the most decorated football players that ever set foot on the 40 acres. Tommy Novus we're keeping. All right, Marcus, you got 3 left, and you got 1 more keep. Keeper cut. Malik Jefferson.
Cut. And I don't mean that to sound disparaging. I'm rolling some dice here, hoping that one of my final 2 is who I think it needs to be. Mm-hmm. But then 2, I don't think it was all Malik's fault, but I I do have to weigh a bit of, what was the expectation versus what you ended up actually getting. And I think, when you kind of start getting into that game, and again, this is not, to take anything from him. Again, a lot of that is on a bunch of us, but I still remember Malik miss or whatever it was when he flipped, and there was this thought that, people were kind of comparing him to, some of the top guys that have ever come through the 40, and I was a bit more quick to kind of be like, hold on, man, pump the brakes. Like I need to see it, and I don't think I ever did.
Yeah, I think he was one thing that really helped him was just some of his the old Nike Spark rating, just some of his just raw skills testing scores were just off the charts. Really good high school linebacker, Big 12 freshman of the year, freshman All-American. Actually left Texas as an All-American, was a Big 12 co-defensive player of the year in 2017. Again, that's another Texas defense. Marcus, a 2017 defense. Texas led the country in non-offensive touchdowns that year. Malik was a really big part of that. Again, the offense, you kind of had Tom Herman doing the square peg round hole thing with Shane Buechele at quarterback. As good as Shane was, didn't really fit that offense. Sam fit it perfectly, but that was Sam Ehlinger as a freshman. And at times he tended to make freshman mistakes, even though Sam ended up having a great career. So we're cutting Malik Jefferson. Got 2 left, Marcus.
2 to go.
This guy predated you, I think, a year. I think his last season at Texas was 2001. D.D. Lewis, keeper cut.
The only way this works is if DJ is still there. And I think I'm trying to remember, was DD a senior in 02?
No, he was a 01.
01.
Yeah. But
he was around when I was getting recruited. So I remember DD and I knew him well. And
was really, after that 01 season, after Casey Hampton and Sean Rogers left, he did a really good job bridging the gap from that 2000 team with that great leadership with Sean Rogers, Casey Hampton, to that 2002 team when Rod and Corey Redding and that crew kind of took over leadership of the defense. So, and D.D. Lewis was an All-American, and honestly, played in a Super Bowl with the Seahawks, played a lot longer in the league than you would think, and did it as an undrafted free agent. So,
I think now I think I would take one back, but I'm gonna roll the dice here, and I feel like I might actually get burned by it, but I'm gonna cut D.D.
You're gonna cut D.D. Lewis. Okay.
We're cutting, but that's now the first one that I wish I had done differently.
Okay. Would you like to know who you're keeping, Marcus? The last name? You've got 4 cuts, so you automatically got to keep the last name.
Yeah, sure.
You're keeping Derek Johnson. So you're good.
Did it right. All right. So the only thing I would have flipped would have been, in hindsight, I would have kept DD over Jordan Hicks. But everything else, I think I probably would have done the same.
Man, that's a tough one because both guys were really good. D.D. Lewis just got so much better the longer he was at Texas. Yeah, that's a coin toss. I mean, the other 3 keeps. I'm not going to say they're by far like the 3 best linebackers that have ever played at Texas, but
sure,
they might vary. That's definitely the top 2. Like, if we're talking about defensive players, period, like it's Tommy Nobis and Derek Johnson to me are in a tier like by themselves. Right. And then you can talk about whoever else you want, but it's those 2. And then, fill in with the greats after that, the Jerry Grays and the Brian Arakpos and whoever else. So, Marcus, your first time playing keeper cut here on the live stream.
I'm okay with what I did here.
Yeah,
I'm good with this.
I dig it. Texas linebacker edition. You're keeping Jordan Hicks, Britt Hager, Tommy Nobis, Derek Johnson, cutting Sergio Kendall, Anthony Hill, Malik Jefferson, and D.D. Lewis. I'm kind of with you, and I don't know if I've talked myself out of the Sergio Kendall part just because Sergio was like, you can call him an edge, so does he even belong with, like, you can, there's an argument to be had whether he even should be grouped with the linebackers to begin with. But yeah, I mean, I may disagree with you on Jordan Hicks and D. Lewis, but there's a really good debate.
And I think part of why, again, I knew I was going to be a bit biased to guys that I saw kind of up close and personal, right? Like, so to your point, D's senior year, I probably came to 4 or 5 Texas home games because I was, a recruit and I had already committed. And so, I'd watched him a ton. I really liked how he worked. And it was somebody that, a lot of us, just kind of looked up to coming in. He was kind of like that elder statesman, just a really solid individual. And then I'm not sure if I've told this story on here before. I may have or not, but Derek Johnson was the reason I wanted to come to Texas, like from a player standpoint, right? Aside from Coach Brown, doing an incredible job selling the program, and then collectively, like my recruiting class, DJ used to come to my church sometimes when I was still in high school. So like his mom knew somebody that was like, in the music ministry or something. And so when my church honored me, for, getting ready to kind of go to Texas or whatever, DJ was there that day with his mom. His mom and my mom got pretty close. And then he was also my host on my visit. He and Said B hosted me and Larry Dibbles. And so, DJ was the guy that like we all kind of looked up to. And so when I got to Texas, I backed up DJ. I played second, fiddle to him. And he never, got hurt, which, I'm thankful for. And he never came off the field. So he was the guy I looked up to, still do to this day. We go to the same church now. So it's cool to kind of see all the stuff that he's doing in the community and, get to see him, once or twice a week. So, DJ is my guy. And so I was holding out hope that he was on there. And then there was a couple other guys, you were saying way back machine, but I've gotten a chance to know Doug Schenkel over the years. Yeah. I've got a chance to know him and his wife, and he's another guy that had like some crazy tackle total. I think in like a single season, he might've had like 150 some odd, and he's pretty high up there on the career list. So I was thinking about him. And then the other reason I asked about the tweener is like, sometimes I've seen people, throw Kiki Diala in there, even though I think he was more of a defensive end, but I've heard, people try to make the argument for him at linebacker. And then I've even had a handful of people every now and then try and, put Rakpo there just because he stood up a little bit.
I wouldn't put I wouldn't put Rack there. The only other one, Mark, is it really like of the hybrid guys that you can make an argument for, to me, was Joseph Osai, because if you look at his All-American honors, he was an All-American technically at some linebacker positions, even though if you watch Texas during that 2020 season, I wouldn't say Joseph Osai was a linebacker, but you could technically, I guess, if you really wanted to make the argument, you probably could.
That's fair. Yeah, I think that's a solid list, man. Like if you expanded it, then like there's maybe one or two more guys that I would start, trying to make a case for. I don't know if my numbers would necessarily back it up, but I have a soft spot for Dusty Renfro and Muck.
Yes,
those would be my other two I would kind of do some campaigning for.
Yeah, I want to. David Keith Williams mentioned something. I want to get to it here in just a second. But Marcus, I pulled the Doug Schenkel actually is second all time at Texas in career tackles.
I thought he was up there.
Yeah, these are some of Britt Hager's numbers. Britt Hager is the school record holder for tackles in a game. Out 27 against Texas Tech on Halloween in 1987. Yeah. He is also the Texas record holder for single season tackles with 195 in 1988. And he is the career tackles leader with 499, one shy of 500.
I knew it wasn't. I knew, a couple people thought I was losing my mind when I cut Ant and Sergio, but I had Hager in my mind. I had DJ in my mind, and I just knew Hager had some crazy numbers. I didn't even know they were that, up there. For some reason in my head, I had him at like 170 something tackles. I knew about the 27 in one game though. So
I didn't want to misspeak, but I thought it was really close to 200. Like it was his best season. 195 and 88. Cause I remember, is he even on here? Jordan Hicks All-American year. He had 147. And I remember looking at it at the time, like, man, 147 tackles, like that's got to be pretty high up on the school single season list. And that's when I decided, like, Britt Hager's tackle numbers are like I don't want to say they're as safe as any Ricky Williams rushing record, but it's real close. I just don't, because guys aren't going to stay in college that long either, Marcus, or stay in one place that long now in the portal era.
Yeah.
You'd have to be a 4-year starter and basically have a 4-year injury-free career at Texas to have 500 tackles in a career.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, they were running the ball a lot more back then. There were fullbacks like on every team, a whole bunch of that. So, different era for sure. But I think just in the context of, again, you're telling the story of Texas football. How do I not talk about a guy that had 27 tackles in a game and consider him as, one of the ones that you would want to have going to war with you if you had to. So
absolutely. All right, we can keep talking Texas linebackers. We can take this show wherever anybody wants in the chat, but right now I got to thank one of our sponsors. Big shout out to Rogue Shop. Rogue Shop is bringing real plant medicine back to its roots. Rogue Shop ships nationwide. Make sure you use the promo code on Texas for a special discount. Rogue Shop has it all, from oils and creams to flour and gummies. Again, that's rogueshop.com. Use the code on Texas for a special discount. And thank you to Rogue Shop for being a sponsor here on the Wednesday night live stream at All Texas Football. David Keith Williams brings this up, Marcus, and I think this is an interesting debate, or it's an interesting topic. He said if DeMarvion Overshown had redshirted, physically developed into a linebacker, he could have been an Isaiah Simmons type of linebacker for Texas. He also David Keith Williams also mentions that since this is the subject about Texas linebackers, I would take if DeMarvion Overshown had entered Texas with the mindset he would develop to play linebacker, I think in 4 years as a Texas linebacker, he could have been top 4. I can see where you'd say that, Marcus, but I would disagree because of 2020 and guys getting that extra year back. Like Ja'Day was one of those guys that it really helped. I think it really helped DeMarvion because he got to come back for that 22 season. He didn't have to have a surgery. He got a full offseason at linebacker and played it. And I think we really saw, okay, now that and you got to think too, David Keith Williams, you had a bunch of coordinator changes at the time too. So it's learning different systems. But I really feel like, Marcus, there might have been some meat left on the bone, but I don't think there was much by the time DeMarvion Overshown was left. I think he left about as developed as he was going to get at Texas.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Jeff, it's tough when you it's really tough when you start doing the if, because I have like probably 4 guys that kind of start coming to mind at almost every position that if a thing or two had gone differently when it came to their development or, how they attacked it. Like for DeMarvion, I don't know if it was really anything about his mindset. More so it was he was learning to play the position, right? Like coming out of ARP, it was just a heat-seeking missile. And he was really, like a safety that was just back there, like kind of scanning the field for whoever it was he was going to go and take out, So I don't know if it was more I think it would be less about his mindset for me and more about just him ultimately learning the position and starting to figure it out. And then I think some of those teams too, they kind of needed an injection of that kind of talent. He had that energy and charisma to him, even if he didn't know, necessarily everything he was doing right away. I still think it probably benefited the team. So I'm with you, Jeff, in that I don't know if there's a ton more you could have gotten out of him to get him into the top 4, right? Because if you're saying if he's top 4 of all time, then, again, we've already kind of thrown out there, all right, DJ and Tommy, those are your hands down. Again, I'm kind of making my case for Britt Hager with the tackles that he piled up. And then when you start looking at, some of these other guys that we were just, kind of talking through, it's still hard for me when I look at a complete body of work to find a way in which I would have, projected to put him in front of any of those guys.
I mean, you gotta go like Johnny Treadwell. You can go Jeff Lighting is a guy that I don't think it's talked about enough from the 80s. Brian Jones.
I was gonna say BJ, and that's family friend of mine. So I was hoping he didn't end up in there, because if I had to cut him somehow, he would have lit me up. But and again, like I said, I mentioned Muck. You got Dusty Renfro. Who else is in there?
I think Roderick McElroy, Marcus, one of the most underappreciated, unheralded Texas defensive players, maybe this century, because there was just so much great talent around him. I don't think he just got enough credit for really being a guy that really tied that whole defense together.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And and again, I could kind of keep doing this, right? Like if you start going back to my class, like Aaron Harris, was a guy that
All American.
yeah, like he piled it up as well, and didn't even have the same physical stature as some of these other guys we were talking about, right? Like Harris was like probably 6 foot 230 or so at the time.
Yeah.
Most of these guys were 6'2". I was 6'2" and a half, about 225 by the time I got pretty good into my first year on campus. And so I started just thinking about the position, and it's probably the one that is my favorite, obviously, because that's where I started at Texas, playing position wise. But there's a bunch of great guys that played that position and had really good careers. So it would just be tough for me to imagine a world where I'm giving Overshown all the leeway of if different things broke his way, but then I didn't do the same for the rest and imagine him top 4 and maybe not some of those guys.
Demo a little bit like Jordan Hicks, and it shows just how much he won the genetic lottery in terms of the number of injuries he's had, and yet he's still the Cowboys still really value him as a piece of what they're doing. So he's gonna have a chance to play. I don't know if he's going to make double-digit years in the league, but he's going to have a chance to play as long as his body will let him.
And I think his best ball is still in front of him.
I do.
So when you talk about where he was at Texas versus, I think he'll end up being a better pro than he was at college.
Yeah, and we've seen it. Like if you, I don't know how much Cowboys you watch, Marcus. Unfortunately, I've watched.
Unfortunately, too much. Yeah.
But like when he's out there, he's making plays. It's just a matter of being out there and being healthy enough to play. It's not a matter of whether or not he can play in the league, because he can. But I'll say this: Derek Johnson is kind of special to me, because I remember being in high school. Marcus, we graduated the same year, which Derek Johnson was a year before us.
Yep.
And I remember because we would get the Austin TV stations and we would get the Waco TV stations. So I remember there was one game, I think it was maybe my sophomore year, where you get home early enough to watch some of the highlight shows if it's a home game. And I remember just watching the Waco High highlights. And that was the first time I saw Derek Johnson. I was like, oh, I said, he looks different. He looked like, when I saw Derek Johnson, I'm like, he looks like, like Derek Brooks and like the guys that play like Florida State and Miami and Florida, like one of those kind of linebackers. I'm like, Texas hadn't had a guy like that. That's different. And to your point, like he kind of broke the mold and changed, like, you can't find another Derek Johnson, but for Mac and whoever was the defensive coordinator, whether it was Bull Reese or Gene Chizik or Greg Robinson, whomever, it's like, okay, we got to find linebackers that kind of look like that are longer levers, more athletic, can run. To your point, like Garnett Smith was one of those guys.
He's in my class too.
Yeah. So like he really changed the way. And again, Derek Johnson's like a once in a lifetime player. You're not going to find Derek Johnson, but it's like, okay, that's the blueprint that we need to go after now, because that's where the linebacker position goes. And Rod and I've talked about it too, Marcus. Like it's funny with DJ because he was probably ahead of his time. Like if he played in the league now, I think he'd be a multi-time over all pro, all decade type guy. Like the longer he stayed in the league caught up to his skill set, not the other way around.
Yeah. DJ, I mean, I'd be willing to bet he still probably has the record for forced fumbles. Because he had that punch out, here at Texas. I want to say he probably had, I know he had one season with 4 picks. He might have had 2.
Derek, single season forced fumbles. Derek Johnson forced 9 fumbles in 2001.
Yeah. Like that, stuff like that, it's just, he had a knack for the ball. And to your point, Jeff, of the high school stuff, and, this is one of those deals where, like, now that, I'm however many years removed, I'm probably adding some to the lore, but I remember seeing clips of him against Pflugerville High. And I swear he had like 30 tackles. And if it wasn't 30, it was like 28. Like, I'm not far off. This isn't one of those where it was 15 and it was, I'm like doubling it up. Like, he was all over the field. And I remember at that point being like, okay, like that's what, a college linebacker is supposed to look like. And he was just, the one that you kind of started trying to mold yourself after. So
It was fun growing up where I was because the two prominent defensive players kind of from that northern part of Central Texas both came out in the same class, Derek Johnson and Tommy Harris. And to me, anytime I've looked at a linebacker, okay, how does he compare to Derek Johnson? And fair or not, when I see defensive tackle prospects, I'm like, okay, how does he compare to Tommy Harris? And again, those guys to me are one of one type guys. Yeah, 9 forced fumbles in 2004. Like I can still remember. I remember the Baylor game in 2004 because I was there for that one. He punched the ball out like I think it was Anthony Craig was the running back. He grabbed punches the ball out. The ball went, I think, like 30 yards, 40 yards down the field. Like it was insane.
Anthony Craig, yeah, he's from Pflugerville too. So that I've known Craig since. Gosh, probably since like Pop Warner. So it's cool when you get to talking about some of this stuff and kind of going back down memory lane. But yeah, man, DJ was he was a special player, man, for sure.
I was covering Baylor at the time, Marcus, and being a Syntax guy, I wore it out in the press box. Like I just wanted them to use Paul Mosley more. I'm like, hey, you want to run the ball? Give it to Paul Mosley.
So that was my big rival, right? Like there was a period where me and Paul were in the same district. I was at Conley, Paul was at Anderson, and that was kind of some primetime viewing when he and I would meet up in the hole. But Paul was a great guy, and he and I always had a great competitive rivalry. So it was cool to see him go to Baylor and do his thing there. Last thing I was going to say too, you mentioned Tommy. This may be well documented, I'm not sure, but Tommy and DJ were really good friends. So much so that like there were times where if OU's like bye week lined up, sometimes Tommy would be in Austin, like when they had a bye week, or sometimes in the summer he would come kick it. It was cool to see both of them not only play that well in high school, but then in college, and then have the friendship that they did.
For whatever it's worth now, which this and $5 will get you a cup of coffee. From what I was told by people in Killeen who were close to Tommy Harris wanted to be an Aggie. But I don't know who on the A&M staff botched that, but apparently Tommy Harris really wanted to be an Aggie. So still, he's a Sooner, yes, but I have to give it up to Tommy Harris. Maybe the best Sports Illustrated cover for a college football preview I've ever seen. I think it was the 2003 where it's like he's muddy and like the jersey's torn up and it's raining. I'm like, look, I hate it because you got the cover, but that's a really nice cover. So, and by the way, my buddy Sam Hobbs, if you're listening, you stole that magazine from me and you still owe me by chance you're listening to the show right now. Let's get to a couple super chats. Marcus, I want to get to this one because All Right Cube mentioned this a couple times. He said, who on the roster could be the next great linebacker? And then he said, piggybacking on that last comment, Rasheem Biles. Rasheem Biles is going to be one and done at Texas. So, I mean, it could be a hell of a year, but it's only going to be 1 year. I mean, Tyler Atkinson's pretty obvious choice, Marcus.
Agreed. Yeah, that's probably the one that you got to go with. But then if I were to pick somebody other than Atkinson that I think has the build, is already kind of getting some of the buzz for it, that reminds me of a less heralded but went on to be one of the most productive and have a long NFL career in Brian Robinson. I would probably look at Rocky Cummings as well, because he's a guy that could, he could carve out a lane. More than likely, if he is able to get on the field relatively early and start making some difference, he would be a guy that you would continue to keep in the fold and make plans for, and would be a guy that could develop because he has the frame for it, man. I think he came. I might be wrong about this. I feel like I saw him at the Vanderbilt game when they were honoring our 05 team.
Believe that was the week that he OV'd.
Yeah. And he was one of those guys where like, everybody's gets their height and weight. And I mean, when I was in high school, I was 6'4", right? Supposedly. And then I got barefoot, doing a pro day and found out I was 6'2.5" some years later. But he was a legit 6'4". Like he walked past me and I was like, wait a minute. And then I got to talking to Huff and he was like, yeah, he plays linebacker. And I was like, oh, okay. So, yeah. So if it's not Atkinson, if I have to pick one of the young guys, I'd throw a chip on Rocky Cummings.
I like Rocky Cummings. Like the tape checks out physically. I don't know if what you said. I mean, Jerry, CJ, anybody that stood next to him has said the same thing. Like, wow, you're just kind of blown away. Like you see what guys are listed at, but you don't expect him to be that big. I'm still big on, hey, the head coach that offers him, like, what is that coach's area of expertise? So, like, it used to be like, hey, if Bob Stoops offers a defensive back, then I'm probably Gary Patterson offers a defensive back. We probably need to go check the tape. Like what you used to be like Art Briles with quarterbacks. Like go check the tape. Like you probably missed something. Justin Wilcox at Cal, great defensive mind. Really knows the linebacker position. If Justin Wilcox was 100% on board with Rocky Cummings, then I have no reason to doubt that take. Like I like that take.
And I saw some of CJ's updates over on TexasFootball.com on the board where he was talking about, some of the guys that were impressing. Mm-hmm. And when he got to Rocky Cummings, that's the one that I replied to. And I said that exact same thing. If he was good enough for Justin Wilcox, sign me up.
No doubt. Actually, Marcus, we got a super chat, but let's go ahead and get to one last sponsor read. And that's thanking Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise for being a sponsor here on the Wednesday night live stream. Do you want control over your own destiny? If you do, then maybe franchise ownership is right for you. If you think that's the case, then call Andy Ludicky. He's an expert at placing people in the right franchise, one that's going to fit your strengths and your finances. Franchise ownership isn't for everybody, but if you've got a desire to take control of your destiny, call Andy or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Again, that's andy@myperfectfranchise.net. And thanks to Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise for sponsoring the Wednesday night live stream here on Texas Football. Sugar Poppy Chulo has a super chat, Mark. So, Marcus, who did you play with that was just a naturally violent and aggressive guy on and off the field, maybe a screw loose?
I mean, so on the field, like I kind of tend to go to like Casey Studdard. He wasn't really like violent or anything off the field. Like Casey was a good guy, had a great time off the field. We definitely had our nights of partying. I'm trying to think of who else kind of had maybe a screw loose. I mean, you mentioned one, Garnett Smith. He was a little different, man. Like Garnett, for whatever reason, he just had this like kind of odd intensity about him at all times. I remember he used to keep like these 60, 70 pound dumbbells in his room and would just be like doing curls at night. And if you remember Garnett was like a brick house, man. Like he was one of those guys that was almost some of those guys you look at sometime and you're like, all right, he got to high school. Is he really going to be able to get much more out of his frame? Because he was already like, just yoked up. And probably to some degree that probably worked a little bit against him because it made him, a little more stiff than I think. But he was one of those guys that was just kind of wired a little differently. And then there's a couple more guys that I'm not going to name. One of which there's some very famous stories about, but I didn't play on any teams with him. But just about anybody kind of around my time frame knows about him. And I'll just give you this. When you say a screw loose, his nickname was Big Screw. So, I'll leave that one there. But yeah, I would probably go with Garnett Smith, and not ever anything where like he got in any kind of trouble or something, but just he was a different kind of cat off the field.
Yeah, definitely don't say anything, Marcus. It's going to get you in a bind. I don't want to be don't want to be responsible for you getting a phone call or a text over something.
I'm out. Yeah, nobody's going to get me, but I do appreciate you looking out
on the live stream. Somebody asked it and I forget. Oh, Stephen Houston asked. He said, Marcus, who was the greatest what if guy you played with at Texas? Marcus, I'll be real quick with this because during your time at Texas, the two guys that jumped to my mind, one is Eric Hardiman. The other is Brian Pickrell because just a nasty first step. It was health with Pick. It was different reasons for Eric Hardiman, but those are the two guys from your time at Texas that come to mind.
Yeah, I always name the same two, and it's always Eric Hardiman and Adorian McCullough. If I had to go two beyond that, it would then be Pick and Robert Timmons.
Insanely talented guys. Like Adorian McCullough might have been, he was in the discussion to be, and actually his name came up. I think CJ was asking me about this because somebody in Garland ISD is now running fast, and he's like, "Hey, who's this guy Dorian McCullough?" I'm like, might have been the fastest high school recruit in the country in that 02 class, like legit world class. His big highlight, again, it was a loss, so Texas fans don't go back and watch it, but the 02 Oklahoma game.
Mm-hmm.
He ran down, and Antoine Savage was about to return.
It was Savage. Okay.
before halftime. I still don't know how Dorian McCullough caught him because he was like on the other side of the field and had a terrible angle and still managed to catch him. Like, if they were doing catapult tracking, Marcus, he's in like, I don't know, the 25, 26 miles per hour. It had to be insane how fast.
Dorian, and what's funny about what you just said, Jeff, is Rod and I were talking last Thursday, and somehow we were talking about momentum shifts, and we were talking about that OU game where he had gotten the pick, and then I think it was a pick six, matter of fact, and then the ensuing kickoff, they ran it back, and we couldn't remember who the returner was, but I told Rod, I was like, and the only reason he got stopped was Dorian McCullough. And I remember it like it was yesterday, being on the sideline. To your point, he came from the other side of the field, and Dorian was running so fast, he went in front of him. Like, he got in front of him somehow and ended up just kind of like holding on and taking him down. But yeah, Dorian, I remember Dorian running the 100. It was either state or Texas relays. He couldn't touch his toes. Like, so to be a sprinter and not be flexible is kind of crazy, but he couldn't touch his toes. He slipped out of the blocks in the 100 and still won.
Insane.
Which is like, if you watch any track, right? There's no room for error there. But yeah, Dorian was one of the fastest guys I've ever seen.
You know what's funny about the OU kickoff return story, Marcus? Casey Studdard told me his point of view from that, and it was almost verbatim exactly what you just said. Like, you're like, where in the world did that guy come from? Like,
it was like
you almost forget that, like, you just had this like back-breaking momentum play. You're like, where the hell did Dorian McCullough just come from?
It's one of those that makes you almost think like, okay, did he just walk off the sideline or something? And like, but because I knew he was on the kickoff team, like, I wasn't looking at him, but it just, when he appeared out of nowhere, it was like, okay. And then you mentioned, Pickerel, he was in my class as well. Injuries but he was one of those guys that just had a very natural sense of how to rush the passer.
100%.
And so a lot of guys, you hear us talking sometimes about having to learn extra moves, hand placement, all that kind of thing. Pick was a solid 6'4", 6'5", but knew how to bend and he knew how to set moves up. Like, he was, I don't know how many, impactful plays he made, our true freshman year, but was one of those guys that, like, if he had just been able to stay healthy, would have been, incredible to watch. And then Robert Timmons, like you said, he was just, I don't even know really. Robert T kind of reminded me a little bit of Anquan Bolden, but with some more wiggle.
That's a good,
And if you think back, even I don't remember. I've been asking if somebody out there has the 2002 Recruits in Review tape, wherever that is. I've looked through everything. I can't find it, but I remember we used to watch those tapes. Like, when we all got to campus, they would bring us in a room and they would play everybody's highlights. And Rob T's was one that, like, just kind of jumped out off the screen in a different way. And even when we started practicing, kind of to your point, and similar to some of these other guys, it didn't work out for him for one reason or another. But he was a special talent.
All right. I think that's going to be it, Marcus. We'll hit this one real quick. Steven had a follow. He said, talk about Eric Hardiman. I don't remember him. All I'll say about Eric Hardiman, in the years, I've been watching since I got out of high school. So the 2002 season was the first time I started watching and reporting on high school football in Central Texas and get in the recruiting realm. One of the best, just pure natural runners of the football I've ever seen was Eric Hardiman. And he had long speed to go with it.
He was a complete athlete. He had huge calves, like, early on in his like Pflugerville ISD career, if you will, like middle school. Like, Eric was dunking. He could run through you, over you, around you. He had wiggle. He was kind of one of those guys that, like, again, kind of felt a little bit before his time. He was like a true all-purpose back. And I will also tell you, I think, let's see, was he 03 or 04?
He was 03.
03. So you think about that defense in 03, a defense that had Derek Johnson on it, and any number of other, really, really talented guys that I want to say we were top 5 or 10 in the country that year. Eric Hardiman was a scout team running back, and he destroyed them every single day in practice. And it was to the point where, I knew him, of course, prior to just both of us being from the Pflugerville school district and everything. I used to try to, walk them to class. I would drive them, to go get a haircut. Anything I could do to try and keep them, on the straight and narrow. But, some stuff didn't necessarily go his way by some choices he made. But I'm happy to report, man, he's doing well now for himself and is, back on the straight and narrow. So that's my guy. But yeah, Eric Hartman was special, man. He was special.
That's one of the things that makes the 05 national championship team so special is that team was insanely loaded with talent. You figure, man, think of all the guys that could have been on that team.
Yeah.
Like man. It's crazy to think about. But Marcus, we will try not to wax poetic about old school Texas football and Central Texas high school football, but I love doing it. So as long as the listening audience doesn't mind, we'll keep doing it. But that's going to do it for this Wednesday night live stream. Again, it's Marcus and I on Wednesday nights going forward, 7 o'clock sharp. I know there's some people early in the chat. They're like, hey, you guys are starting early. Yes, the weeknight live streams, Monday through Thursday, starting at 7 o'clock sharp. Tomorrow night's live stream, it'll be the Winning Drive crew, Rod Babers, CJ Vogel, and Coach Bob Shipley. If you have any other questions, comments, anything else of that nature, make sure you direct it to the guys at Coffee and Football bright and early tomorrow morning. Make sure that you get over to ontexasfootball.com. Check out everything we got going on the website. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football. Yes, Cisco, #4Craig. Make sure that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, anytime we drop a video or go live, you're not missing any of our Longhorn coverage. And again, thank you to Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise for being our lead sponsor. And also, big thank you to Rogue Shop for sponsoring the show. So for Marcus, for Matthew behind the scenes, producing it, the MVP of On Texas Football, and for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, welcome.
Appreciate